Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Well, good morning. So here it is, the 1st of February. Is that possible? I guess it is. And we're going to open up with the best interview of February and probably of the year. It's Darwin Porter. Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you, Anita, and welcome to February. And will you be my Valentine?
Yes, I will. You'll be my best. Oh, that's so sweet. Will you be my Valentine? Yes. So.
I have quite a show this morning,
okay.
So I should really get to it.
Okay.
But first I want to lead in with something Eleanor Roosevelt told me near the end of her life. We invited her to the University of Miami, and we had a luncheon for her in the cafeteria. And I remember one point, you remember something like this all your life. She looked over at me and said, "Young man, you're just beginning life, and you'll face a lot of challenges, a lot of disappointments." But she said, "One thing you must remember is never trust anybody who tells you the world is flat." and this is so symbolic, but her advice rings so true today with now literally Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. They're posting the most outrageous lies.
Yeah.
I mean, and the sad thing about it is so many people believe them. They believe these lies. I mean, someone could be in Moscow pretending to be in Pocatello, Idaho. and so one is going to have to be, and particularly this year that we're in right now, we'll have to be very careful about what to believe, which is my lead-in for what I have to do. All the things going on the 10th anniversary. I'll take it's not a political show, so I'll take a Hollywood or musical figure of what has happened just in the past few months with Michael Jackson. It's on the 10th anniversary of his death. There has been incredible deluge of controversy, and the one thing that so many controversies are today, which is probably unique in American history, is there are often death threats. Now, both commentators from Fox News and also from CNN and MSNBC, they often mention they get death threats. Now I've noticed as the years have gone by, I've been receiving letters ever since I started publishing books back in 1960, or even earlier when I wrote for the Miami Herald. You know, not everyone's going to agree with you, but those letters were, they say, "Well, I think you're all wrong about that," or "You didn't get that story the way I believe it." And today they say, "Die. You deserve to die." I mean, it's frightening. And this came up particularly this year. Now we have Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and so many others, but the one that has generated the most controversy is Michael Jackson. And it really began this past March when a documentary film called Leaving Neverland was released. And it is now on home box office. And I saw it again last night. And two young men they're still young, but their names are Wade Robson and James Safechuck.
Yeah.
I've never heard
that
name before.
No.
And what?
No, I was going to say, I'd never heard their name.
Yeah, Safechuck. And they were used as when Michael Jackson was sued by Jordan Chandler for child molestation. They were then brought in because they lived with Michael Jackson. They shared the bedroom with him, and he called them as testimonial witnesses that he never touched me. You know, they both maintained that in court. However, in this documentary, they admitted that they didn't tell the truth. And so it's a long, detailed documentary about how they were molested as children. And, for example, Robson lived with Michael Jackson in his bedroom beginning at the age of 7. And but by 14, he was sort of too old. The theory is that he liked prepubescent young boys. And, well, this film was released on home box office, and the outrage was unbelievable. You know, the death threats, the recriminations, yet many many biographers of Michael Jackson who were releasing a revised version of books they had written, they said, they told the New York Times they may have to revisit Jackson.
No kidding.
One man, I won't embarrass him by giving his name, he wrote a 700-page book about Michael Jackson, about what a lady killer he was. And Elizabeth Taylor was his friend. And in one passage, he said Michael Jackson periodically seduced Elizabeth Taylor. Now, if Dame Elizabeth were still alive, she would get a big cackle out of that. and I mean, his book now is completely invalid. But the frightening thing is the violent responses to this. It's first, many people say these boys are lying. Well, they did lie. They did lie in their first presentation, but they present a very detailed and documented story. And in fact, a lot of the action, not the private action, but the action of him relating to these children is captured on video. In fact, one of them actually went on a world tour with him, and the estate of Michael Jackson, which is taking in millions and millions of dollars every year, has filed a $100 million lawsuit against home box office.
Darwin, let me interrupt you a minute. You know, when I got started so quickly with you, and I want to just tell everybody, you're listening to Darwin Porter, who is an author of many, many books. We call him a celebrity expert, and he's calling in from Staten Island, New York. And I just wanted to ask you one question before you went on. Did you ever meet him? Did you ever meet Michael Jackson?
No, not personally. Well, there was one time in Hollywood where I shook his hand.
Yeah, but you never really. But you never talked to him like you did so many of the celebrities. He was too young, and right?
No, I did not. Nor would it have benefited me at all. Now I have to explain that. I wrote a book in 2007 about. I called it The Social and Sexual History of Michael Jackson. Well, fortunately, I reviewed my book in the terms of all of these revelations, and my book, thank God, holds up. When he died in 2009, I added a chapter detailing his death. But you see, at no point did I personally make accusations against him, because how would I know? For example, the critics say Michael Jackson did not do that. Well, you cannot say. How could you say what someone did not do? I mean, you don't follow people around their entire lives. What I did, for example, is I did not make. I wrote about what people said. For example, a co-pilot flying Jordy Chandler and Michael from Los Angeles to Honolulu. He said he came back and Michael was in the seat inappropriately fondling and doing stuff with Jordy Chandler. Well, I wasn't on that flight, but I quoted him, and because he then later reported it to federal authorities. Well, that gives a reporter a right to do that. So my book is, I'm so glad it doesn't have to be revised. My book is an accurate reporter's, I consider it unbiased in the sense that I admired him as a talent. I certainly didn't set out to harm his legacy at all. But, of course, he was the biggest news in the world on the nightly broadcast until O.J. Simpson came along and knocked him off put him in second place.
Right, unfortunately.
You remember that trial?
Oh, yes, I remember that trial. Oh, gosh. We all knew he was, I knew I shouldn't do this on the air, but I knew he was guilty. He just had this lawyer who was where we're seeing today also, same thing.
Well, the main case that Jordy Chandler brought did go to court, and the father was behind it. Now, a lot of people say that they were just trying to exploit a celebrity. But, the New York Times pointed out you can try to take advantage of celebrity, and it doesn't mean that the child molestation can also occur. For example, the father, now I did meet him one time, and he had written, I met him, I used to know Mel Brooks and Bancroft, and Mel Brooks did this film, it was called Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and it was sort of a spoof of Errol Flynn and the Adventures of Robin Hood in 1938. It was amusing, and Evan Chandler wanted to be a scriptwriter. He was the father of Jordan, who brought the lawsuit. Well, Michael then persuaded him. He said, you write the scripts and I'll produce the movie. And they were going on just fine for a while until they had a big falling out. And so in a way, he then filed the lawsuit. And that was the time when the police got a search warrant and they searched Neverland, which was the ranch, that fantastic place where Michael lived. And that's when they had to do a strip search because the police got him to describe Michael's penis, and then Michael had to strip and be photographed.
Oh, you're kidding.
I know this sounds crazy.
It does.
And then the case was dropped, and Michael gave them $25 million.
Oh, my heavens.
And then when Jordan was called for future actions, you could find him at the Davos ski resort or someplace. He fled the country. Mm. And now, I have a sad end to the father, Evan. It's been revealed now that he and Jordan lived together for a while, but death threats were pouring in from actually all over the world. And Evan Chandler changed his name many times, and then he and his son had a big falling out, and the son claimed he hit him with a barbell and sprayed mace in his face, and so they broke up. And in 2009, Evan Chandler's body was found. He had taken a revolver and aimed it at his head and committed suicide.
Oh, my gosh.
But he had a terrible life because he kept changing his address, and the fans went after him and pursued him. So in that case, he did take advantage, and yet Jordan Chandler, the police, his story checked out. Now, but when another case came up, that's when these two young men who are still alive and doing very well, actually. One is in creative advertising, and the other is a choreographer, although they said in the documentary they're still wounded by all the things that happened to them. But they got their greatest exposure on the Oprah Winfrey Show. She had them both on, and I think that Oprah is a very honest woman. I don't know if you have a chance to watch her, but
I have in the years past. I have. I respect her. I respect her.
yeah, and actually, she was a friend of Michael, which makes it, was not trying to destroy him, but she's a journalist and she had them on, and they're very convincing. And she said, I believe them. Actually, it's sort of heartbreaking what they told, but also then the mothers and the family had to confess that they were sort of taken in, meaning one family was living in Australia and he got them to move to Hollywood. And he took one on tour and he flew them to Monaco, and one of them he bought a sort of mansion for them, and also he was the biggest star in the world, so they found being in his presence was very, very dazzling because they were sort of very low-income people, and suddenly they were plucked up, and here they're hanging out with Madonna, and it was just amazing. And then, of course, they did begin to suspect, and each parent quizzed their child, and the children denied it. Michael had coached them very well. And I'm only citing him. I mean, there could be many other examples, but the reason I'm bringing him up is, in many ways, this is the most dramatic case. The Jackson estate is filing a $100 million lawsuit against Home Box Office. Apparently, Home Box Office signed an agreement in 1992 that they would not disparage Michael. And I didn't read the terms of the agreement, but it was apparently not disparage him in terms of that documentary. And the Jackson estate is claiming that represents in perpetuity.
Let me ask you a question, though. Wait, let me ask you a question, Darwin. You have, of course, known so many celebrities, and is he unique in the world of celebrities?
I'm sorry, would you say that
Yes. Again? You know so many celebrities, and I'm asking you, was Michael Jackson unique in what he was and what he did? And
well, Michael Jackson was unique in the sense of there have been child molesters, of course, among Hollywood stars. Not that many, believe it or not. I found movie stars often prefer other movie stars.
Right. But overall, as a person and as an entertainer and as a whole situation, how would you describe him?
How would I describe? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. How would you describe him?
Describe who?
Michael Jackson.
Oh, Michael Jackson. Well, first I would say that he was an extraordinarily talented young man, but like many abusers, say, of children, he also had a background of abuse. Many psychiatrists have found that the abusers who grow up to be abusers came from a childhood of abuse. His father was violent toward him. I mean, if he didn't like his performance, he would knock him in the mouth and stop him at the end of a show. Oh, you're kidding.
Really?
Oh, it was terrible. His mother was always very supportive. So he always had that thing, but a lot of things. Michael never had a childhood. In many ways, I'm doing Judy Garland now, and their stories are almost parallel, that at the age of 2, they were forced on the stage.
I see.
And so their childhood was blotted out. And through many of these children, particularly in Netherlands, he was recreating and reliving almost his childhood. And then he had this remarkable entertainment, and he could lure people to him. I mean, not only Elizabeth Taylor, but like an actor like Gregory Peck became one of his dearest friends. So he had a certain charismatic quality. And as far as Neverland, he had what a great place if you wanted to almost lure someone in. I mean, this for a child would be like a fantasy coming true. So it's one of the saddest stories. Yet these charges that people were just trying to destroy his career as indicting as leaving Neverland is, would you believe his record sales increased 10%?
I want to ask you a question about Neverland. I don't know anything about it, really. It wasn't something. What was it like there? Why was it so fantastic?
Oh, it was a fantasy. It was once when, after he sold it and everything, I used to write a book on California, and I went there, and it was actually more or less under the control of the police. It was like walking into a child's paradise. There were a merry-go-round inside the house, exquisitely furnished, just anything you wanted. The bedrooms were like Marie Antoinette would have felt at home in either one of them. Beautiful, beautiful furnishing, landscaping. He created a dream world. And in a way, I think he lived in this dream world. But I guess back to our point, whatever, and you're seeing that certainly, we're going into 2020, which some people predict will be a year that will live in history. So we'll see, some years are sort of forgotten. Like, can you recall a lot from 1977? No major things seem to happen in 1977, but I think the people who are predicting 2020 will be a great year, and certainly Michael Jackson would not have found 2019 a great year, but
Where is he buried? Where is he buried?
Let me see.
I mean, it's not in Neverland, right? It's nothing like that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. They sort of, but I do know that I saw the funeral was televised, and do you know the funeral was watched by 1 billion people around the world?
No, I didn't know that.
And this home box office, this film has been sold to 130 territories in the world.
Oh, my.
I mean, in New Zealand, other than a sports pro, became the most watched TV show in New Zealand. I didn't know Michael was that big in New Zealand.
Oh, my God.
But it is a devastating indictment. Also, it's coming at a time of the Me Too where we're a little bit more sensitive. I think the world is a little bit more sensitive to these charges of sexual harassment and abuse than they were in years gone by.
I have another question. We have an extra 5 minutes for you this morning, so why did he want to become white? Why did he change his look?
Well, I know that was the thing that I've talked to many people about, and he was not happy with his look, and I think he did want to be white, but that's not unusual in the history of race in America. I mean, in other words, he said it was just a skin condition, but I think it was more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, he didn't like his nose. You can see that cute little boy nose.
Yes.
And he had 19 plastic surgeries.
Really? Oh, my. I also want to ask you about his family. So are any of his brothers, sisters now, other than his sister, famous, or are they just kind of living off his money?
Now, but they've got tons of money.
Yeah.
But I think their day has come and gone. And then he felt LaToya Jackson, who became an artist in her own right, she said he used to bring boys to Neverland all the time. She went on the air on television and said he was a child molester. And then later on, they made up, and she said her husband at the time forced her to do it. So we'll never know the truth, I mean, but I was very shocked. Of course, sisters have turned on their brothers. I'm not shocked by that. But LaToya was a very damaging witness at the when Michael was in his greatest trouble. I'm glad that they made up in later years. And Janet Jackson was a big star, and she got involved in that trouble when she had a breast,
right, an exposure, right. Well, Darwin, I guess we're running out of time, but let me just say that it is amazing to hear you and know so much about things that we don't read about, and that you just, you must have the hugest library. I mean, I know you have the hugest brain, but the
you
things.
Won't believe the boxes of stuff. I mean, I started collecting on the book on Judy. I started collecting data. She came to. My mother worked for Sophie Tucker on Miami Beach, and Judy and Sophie were great friends. And so I got to meet Judy Garland when I was 13, and I was enchanted by her. And she sang "Over the Rainbow" to me, and I've loved her ever since. But talk about a mess.
Well, you're going to be writing about it, I know, and that's the book you're working on now, Judy Garland. And we feel
a book.
I can't wait. And actually, your other book, you don't know that. The book that you sent me, the smaller book, we're putting that on the cover of the February issue. It's a wonderful, delicious book, Darwin.
Well, that's some stories that I am very intimately acquainted with.
Right, I know. It's a wonderful book, so we are featuring that. I wanted to tell you that. So, Darwin, it's been great talking to you this morning.
Listen, Anita, I want to hope that you and I get unscathed throughout this year.
Well, I feel unscathed, and you will be. You work so hard, and thank you so much for being such a big part of my life and the readers' lives and the radio listeners' lives.
Agreeing to be my Valentine.
Yes, you're my best Valentine. Thank you so much, Darwin. Okay. Take care of yourself.
Goodbye.
All right, bye.